Well, I'm just excited, as you started off, that we're talking about him. And there's been like a constant change in the thought process about him by the mass media. As a basketball player, we're not talking about his political or social stances and looking at him in a negative view. And I'll say it. I wasn't going to say it, but I've never said it to Kyrie, but I've said it to Stephen A. Because at one time, Stephen A. was an advocate about having a battle with this guy. And I had to call Stephen. I'm like, this guy's from our neighborhood. I named like 6 people. And I said, Stephen, those people mentored you. They mentored him. So when you say something about him, you're actually saying it about us. And so he understood, and they kind of fell back. And because as a media person, we have to understand that young men go through young things. They grow up, they learn things, and they appreciate things, and they have a different viewpoint than we might have had. But as a basketball player, you gotta double this guy. And if you don't double this guy, you go home in 4. And that's the difference between this Kyrie, and I love to see
Who's in the building, Kenny?
Superman is in the building when he has the ball over there.
Yeah, all that stuff is good. He self-inflicted himself. He got to take some responsibility. I think he's grown up. I think he's matured. Stephen A. and other people criticized him, and he rightly deserved it. You can't go out there being anti-Semitic, and you can do the vaccine thing. That's your own thing. But he deserved the criticism he got. He deserved the suspension he got. But as a basketball player, I think he's really grown up. I thought after game 1, that was a grown man in full flight. I'd never seen him that happy. We all made mistakes. I've done plenty of stupid things, but at some point you have to grow up, and I think he's grown.
Yeah. Big JTV, man. If you're new to this, which is most of my audience, most people who watch, like the video, man. I'm not asking for no super chat. I'm not e-begging like Fresh and Fit. I'm not out here begging for anything from y'all. I don't even need y'all to subscribe. If you want to subscribe, you do it. If you don't, you don't. Just press that like button, man. That like button, that's all I want from you. It's right there at the bottom. Click that. I respect you for doing that. And if you already done it, I appreciate y'all. Let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. Shout out to Kenny the Jet Smith for spitting facts. And this is an overall conversation that we need to have about sports media, specifically First Take. Now, look, man, I'm a big fan of sports media. I like the art, the craft of it, you know what I mean? Because it is a craft, it is a skill. It is something that has to be worked on over a prolonged time in order to be good at, you know what I mean? In order to be very, very good at. And when I say this with no hesitation. It's not a coincidence that Stephen A. Smith is at the top of it. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that Stephen A. Smith, once he renegotiates with ESPN, he's going to be paid more than most NFL, well, not most, but a lot of NFL athletes, a good amount of NBA athletes. It's not a coincidence, right? But in order for you to be the top dog, you also have to understand that you are held at a higher standard. So what am I talking about? It's very simple. When you see Kenny the Jet Smith call Stephen A. out on his huge microphone inside the NBA, shout out to Inside the NBA, a video analyzing them will be coming soon. When you see Stephen A. criticized by his contemporary, or you could even say his OG, specifically Kenny, you know what I mean? You have to listen. And trust me, this video is not going to go viral. I know this video is not going to get a lot of views. It's not even going to get anything touching to what I've been previously doing recently. By the way, thank you to everybody who's been showing love to that Charleston White video with Orlando Brown. I might even do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 related to that conversation, because there's a lot to dissect from it. When you're looking at Kenny, right? Kenny's not really the star of Inside the NBA. The star is Charles Barkley, obviously. And then the second star really is Shaq and Charles. I'll put it as a duo because when they go at each other, it's very entertaining. The third, ironically, is Kenny. But Kenny, despite the jokes and everything like that, he gives a very, very a valuable, great perspective regarding the game of basketball. He's not really the entertainment of the show. He is the basketball perspective of the show. He's breaking down coverages. He's breaking down the tactical points, the coach in a sense of the show. And I love his dynamic. So when he brings up Stephen A. Smith and Stephen A.'s blatant hatred, because that's what it was, bro. Stephen A. hated Kyrie. Why did he hate Kyrie? Okay, first and foremost, we're going to talk about the quote-unquote anti-Semitic thing. And by the way, Charles Barkley was completely wrong. Kyrie was not anti-Semitic. He was not. He was not anti-Semitic, and I'm going to stand on them 10 toes and say that Kyrie was never anti-Semitic. What Kyrie was is somebody who is inquisitive about the history of his own people, specifically black people. You know what I mean? And if we get more specific, fundamentally FBA's fundamental black Americans, or ADOS, Americans descendants of slavery, and their history and how their history might have been corrupted or at least skewed within modern and, contemporary studies of history. So he retweeted a movie, or essentially a documentary, from Hebrews to Negroes or something like that. I forget the name of the documentary. And because that specific documentary, said some claims about the Holocaust, now all of a sudden he was suspended by the NBA. The Brooklyn Nets suspended him, and that caused issues. That he had to do some 10-point, action plan in order to be reinstated. It was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Right? Also, Kyrie was opposed to vaccination mandates from New York State. So that did not have him, so he was not able to play for the Brooklyn Nets during his stint there. Right? Vaccine mandates that now, in retrospect, in hindsight, look ridiculous, with an airborne, illness that allegedly or now has had multiple vaccines being resent back, or at least recalled, because those vaccines, specifically AstraZeneca, is dangerous towards people. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about two very, very big portions of society, of mainstream thinking, that have changed dramatically from 2020, 2021 till now, 2024. And Kyrie at those times was being hated, disrespected, canceled, and told to retire, told that he was one of the most delusional, disgusting athletes ever, by the same dude who is the biggest voice in sports media. So what am I trying to say again? I'm trying to say that Stephen A. is a hypocrite, man. Stephen A. is a hypocrite, and Stephen A. is a biased entertainer, not a journalist. Let me keep it real again. Let me repeat again. He's a biased entertainer. He's not a journalist. He's a columnist. Columnists, I'm not trying to disrespect them, because there's some great columnists out there who give great opinion pieces. And the key word here is opinion pieces. The key word here is opinion. And because that opinion of Kyrie, and I hate for Kyrie, clouded not only his judgment, but the public's judgment on how good of a ball player Kyrie is. Kyrie got dropped by Nike, dog. And Kyrie's shoes are nice, bro. They're nice. Yeah, see, I'm trying to tell y'all this, man. Kyrie was always a great player, man. There's a reason he got picked first overall. Kyrie's on the verge of going to the finals again and maybe getting his second ring. But guess what? You don't hear those narratives about Kyrie, not only because he's winning, but because he's actually always been good, and he's always been, in my opinion, right about his opinion, and should be allowed to have his opinions. You know what I mean? But in our society now, when you have the biggest voice in sports media hating on you personally. That's where we go wrong. We only hear the loudest voice in the room, and we don't consider the right voice in the room. We just assume because you're the big gorilla at the top of the mountain, you're always right. No, you're not. No, you're not, Stephen A. And shout out Kenny for calling out the hypocrisy, man. Big JTV. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm out.